Good afternoon. This is the Genealogy Radio Show, and this is Shannon O'Grady speaking. Hi, how are you? Today we have Andrew Davison, and Andrew, what are you going to be talking about today?
Hi, thanks Shannon, and welcome to the show that's keeping you in the loop. I'm Andrew Davison, and for today's show I'd like to expand on what I previously talked about on my section, which was the history of my hometown of Skeeton. I'd actually like to expand that concept now and talk more about the history of West Limerick, focusing on some of the major towns and villages, such as Foyens in Newcastle West. In my previous segment, I spoke about the origins of Skeeton, including its name, Ashketna, and the origins of the castle, which now stands in ruins. I also spoke briefly about the Hellfire Club, which was established in the town. I'd now like to go into more detail of the history of the Hellfire Clubs, which existed throughout Britain mainly, and two of which were formed in Ireland. These were exclusive clubs surrounded in myth and exaggerations, supposedly dens of iniquity in which drunken orgies and other sordid activities were commonplace. In Ireland, these clubs were relatively short-lived, being founded circa 1737 and being effectively disbanded by the early 1740s. This, however, has not stopped them from capturing the public imagination. The first Hellfire Club in England seems to have been formed by Philip Warden in 1719. However, it was suppressed 2 years later by order of King George I in 1721. This didn't stop the spread of the clubs or the philosophy behind their creation. The English and Irish Hellfire Clubs did not appear to be particularly rigid formal structures. They would perhaps be more accurately described as a shared special interest group designed purely for hedonistic and self-indulgent pleasure, with a view to amusing themselves in shocking society. However, there did appear to be at least ceremonial roles. For example, James Warsdale served as the master of the revels of the Dublin Hellfire Club. The secrecy surrounding the club members led to speculations that they were Satanists and devil worshippers. The president of the club was named the King of Hell and dressed like Satan, with horns, wings, and hooves. The members were said to have set a place at each meeting for the devil in the hope that he'd attend. They were also said to hold black masses in the lodge, during which cats and even servants were sacrificed. Some say the building was deliberately set on fire in order to enhance its hellish atmosphere. The Hellfire Clubs mocked religion openly, and a letter supposedly from a member states that the sacrifice of maidens was a ritual performed. This seems to be an allusion to taking their virginity rather than the actual murder of girls. The letter also states that the prospective members must take the following oath: Pluto, I am thine. By thy efficacious mighty self do swear all that is called good by priest-rid fools entirely to abandon, and to let nothing share the least part of my favour, but what is solely urged by most vicious and libidinous desires. The Hellfire Club soon became notorious for its excesses, which were often conducted in public. Its heavy drinking sessions were sometimes attended by sexual assault and violence, ending in murder on at least one recorded occasion. The Irish Hellfire Club supposedly indulged in satanic rituals, making pacts with the devil. According to numerous accounts, the members of the Hellfire Club met to drink spalpeen, hot whiskey and melted butter, from a silver punch bowl. While the club in Skeeton was surely a source of local fascination, the primary club was in Dublin, where they are said to have met on Montpellier Hill. Actual accounts, however, point to the Eagle Tavern in Dublin's Cork Hill, though it seems they did occasionally meet in the hunting lodge on Montpellier Hill. Regardless, much local folklore and urban legend now surrounds Montpellier Hill, which is said to be haunted and cursed by debauchery of the past. However, I would like to note that very little concrete records surround this, so like most of the sordid tales we hear, a lot of this is hearsay. However, there does seem to be at least some truth to the vicious rumors, as it were. Possibly the most well-known town in West Limerick is famous for somewhat less sordid reasons, however. This is Foyens, which is located on the bank of the River Shannon. It's the home of the Flying Boat Museum and was instrumental in the development of the airplane as we now know it. Foynes is a very young town by Irish standards, being founded less than 2 centuries ago, initially created as a port to increase the productivity on the River Shannon, with the town following soon after. The Monteagle Arms Hotel was built in the 1860s on land leased from the Monteagle estate and was Foynes' first public bar and hotel. The hotel was later turned into an airport in 1937, becoming Ireland's first headquarters for aviation. The building also housed the headquarters for Foynes Port Company. At the time, the village had a population of only 500 people. However, the creation of the airport demanded a much higher volume of workers to come to the port town. However, the purchase of the town's only hotel meant that there was now nowhere for these workers to stay. Many stayed in hotels in Adair or Limerick City. However, the steep rates of 25 to 40 shillings per day meant that this was just not affordable for the vast majority of the workers. Some rented accommodations in the village. A Nissan hut converted for lodgings cost 30 shillings per week, while wages at that time for passenger services personnel were 3.5 shillings. Local women decided that renting rooms would provide a good income, so they took in paying boarders. After a while, the street was lined with hotel signs. Some of the notable ones include Crystal Palace Hotel, with 4 rooms to rent, and the Unida Hotel. Surrounding villages began doing likewise. Interestingly, Foynes is the origin of the now famous beverage of Irish coffee. In 1943, Brendan O'Regan opened a restaurant and a coffee shop in the Foynes Terminal building. Late one night in the winter of 1943, a flight left Foynes for New York. After flying several hours in bad weather, the captain decided to return to Foynes to wait for safer conditions. A Morse code message was sent to the Foynes control tower to inform them of the return. Staff were called back in, and the passengers were brought to the restaurant upon landing for food and drink. When Joe was asked to prepare something to warm the weary passengers, he was inspired to put some Irish whiskey in their coffee. One passenger approached the chef and thanked him for the coffee, asking him if he used Brazilian coffee. Jokingly, he answered, no, it was Irish coffee, and so we have the origin of the drink. Perhaps most importantly, with regard not only to the history of Ireland, but of the world, Foynes served as an important base for Allied soldiers during the Second World War, despite being a neutral country. In 1940, the Irish government imposed a news blackout on Foynes. No journalists, cameras, etc. were allowed into Foynes. On being assigned to Foynes, an Irish Army intelligence officer was presented with a round of duties, sometimes including boarding a plane to inspect the interior in the absence of another officer. Others included meeting passengers on the pier, preventing them from encountering unauthorized persons, examining passengers with the help of an army sergeant, observing all visitors while they were in Foynes, and, if possible, conversing with passengers, being told, at embarkation, collect as much information about each passenger as possible without giving an impression of third degree. If a group appears interesting, ask them different questions and collate the various answers. Keep your ear to the ground all the time and for everything. All passenger manifests have to be submitted in advance of flights. At the time, many people traveled under false names with fake passports. In 1939 and 1940, all military personnel had to travel through Foynes in civilian clothing, though this rule was gradually reduced. Those who worked in Foynes at the time say the joke going around was, who are we neutral against? What most people don't realize is that Foynes became a vital escape route for refugees from the war in Europe. If they could get on a flight in neutral Lisbon, they'd be flown into Foynes and await a flight on a seat to a flight on America to begin a new life. A town I previously mentioned here, Adair, also has an incredibly interesting history. castle was erected within an ancient ring fort around the early part of the 13th century. It became a strategic fortress during the following turbulent years. It was the property of the Earls of Kildare for nearly 300 years, until the rebellion in 1536, when it was forfeited and granted to the Earls of Desmond, who gave the castle its present name, Desmond Castle. Another important historical building is the Augustinian Priory, built in 1316 when the monks were first invited to Adair by the first Earl of Kildare. The building is a valuable resource as, though it has been restored, it is a prime example of a medieval church and is a valuable resource for architects studying this period. Indeed, Adair is very well known for its architecture, with thatched cottages still being found commonly in the village. The town is perhaps most known for the Gothic-style building of Adair Manor, which was the former seat of the Earls of Dunraven. The house was built in the early 19th century and retains some of the walls of the 17th century structure. It is now a luxury resort hotel. The original house was a calendar house, meaning a house that architecturally contains quantities that represent the number of days in a year, weeks in a year, months in a year, and days in a week. It has 365 stained glass windows and 52 chimneys. Begun in 1832, construction provided work for the people of the village during the potato famine. In 1850, the family consulted architect Philip Charles Hardwick, who, with much talent and judgment, completed the south and west fronts, after his own designs, following the general plan as intended by the late Earl, the Earl's widow wrote. The initial phase of construction was completed under master mason James Connolly. Along the top of the building, an extract of Psalm 127, verse 1, is made from carved stone. Except the Lord build the house, then labor is but lost that built it. Adair remains a hotspot for Irish genealogy. Indeed, the visitor outlet in Adair Heritage Centre contains the largest repository of Irish, British, and European family crests available anywhere today. In conclusion, I feel that the history of Limerick is deeply fascinating and shows some of the larger context to the general happenings in Ireland at the time. This is a subject I would love to return to in future shows, and I believe that much can be said not just about towns and villages in Limerick, but in each village of Ireland you can find amazing stories and history. I'd also like to speak about Newcastle, which, similarly to Skeeton and Adair, are also Desmond Castle. Castle West's towns grew up around the castle, the ruins which are located off the town square. Ruins are very well maintained. Newcastle West is Limerick's largest town, aside from Limerick City itself, located in the middle of a great bowl-shaped valley in West Limerick, known at time as the Valley of the Wild Boar. The crest of the town still carries this image of a wild boar. The castle built by the Fitzgerald family, similar to the other Geraldine castles, who arrived in Newcastle West some point after 1194. We know that the castle was completed in stone by 1298, but the beginning date is still unknown. The town then came to be known as Newcastle, West Limerick, but over time the West became part of Newcastle, and the town was known to this day as Newcastle West. The castle itself dates back to the 13th century, but the main feature is the Desmond Banqueting Hall, imposing two-story structure that was used by the Earls of Desmond for banqueting and entertainment. The hall, vaulted lower chamber, and adjoining tower were all constructed during the 15th century on the site of the original castle. By 1298, the castle had curtain walls and defensive towers surrounding the complex, with thatched houses, cattle byres, and fish ponds in the centre. Newcastle West was sacked in 1302 and destroyed in 1315. The present structure dates to the 15th century, with the horn chamber built on the site of the earlier structure used for banqueting and entertainment. In 1591, during the Desmond rebellions, the castle was seized by the Crown and granted to Sir William Courtenay on condition that 80 English colonists be settled in the area as part of the Munster plantation. James Fitzthomas Right. James Fitzgerald took the castle in 1598, lost it again the next year. It was re-granted to Sir William's son, Sir George Courtenay, 1st Baronet, in 1639. Local folklore has always hinted that the castle was at one time a seat of the very Knights Templar, and the discovery of the seals of the crests of the Knights Templar during renovations at the end of the 20th century weight to those claims. Similarly to this, Askeaton was also a hotspot for the Knights Templar, and we know that they had quite a strong base in West Limerick at this time. During the reign of Elizabeth I, 3 battles were fought near here. Tradition has it that the locals killed many of the Knights Templar. Markets around this time were held on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. We know large numbers used to attend these fairs for farm workers. Fairs were held on April the 1st, May the 3rd, July the 12th, August the 20th, October and December 10th. The motto that goes with the town coat of arms is Ostuca Stocus, which may be translated as Our hope springs from our tradition. The town now has a population of around 6,600. The town is clustered with buildings of historic interest. To mention a few, the court built in 1842, and the old railway built in 1867, the old IRA monument, which was opened by President Sean T. Kelly, commemorates 67 volunteers who were killed in the War of Independence and the Civil War. Opposite this monument stands the Church of the Immaculate Conception, which was built in 1828. Other buildings include St. Ives Hospital, Parish Hall, the Carnegie Library, and the Courtney Boys. The parish clerk, the Earl donated the site for the cathedral with £1,400, which was around half of the cost, on the condition that the townspeople voluntarily were murmurs with time and stones. The church had 3 galleries, one each transept, one on the nave. It was built on a north-south axis with the front of the church in the river. On Father Call's death in 1857, he was buried in the church. A marble mural commemorates his involvement in the construction of the church. His successor, Dr. Brahan, died in 1861, so Dr. O'Brien succeeded him, and it was he who decided that the church was to be extended and third. It was during this term that the Gothic-style facade with its impressive rose window was erected. A ladies' chapel and a new sanctuary were also added after Dean O'Brien's death in 1885. Another story was added to the bell tower and a bell was erected. In 1894, stained glass windows depicting the Sacred Heart of Jesus, St. Bridget, St. Ita, St. Patrick, and St. Munchin were put into a Gothic window behind the high altar in memory of him.
Sorry, Andrew, that is very interesting. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Shannon, and I hope to see you again next week.
I hope to see you again, or hope to listen to you again, rather. The show's repeated every Sunday, and join back with us next Thursday for a new show. Thank you.